So when we picture a math test, we usually picture a ticking clock and a completely blank page.
Oh, yeah. Staring down row after row of multiplication problems.
Right, and it is all about speed. You either know the answer instantly or you don't.
Exactly.
But walk into a life science lab, and that entire definition of mathematics just completely falls apart.
It really does. It's a totally different world.
We are thrilled to have you with us for today's deep dive as we completely rethink how we use numbers in science. We're pulling from the next generation science standards, cognitive research syntheses, and
And these incredible Bioforge pedagogical guides.
yes,
Yeah.
designed for a 7th grade life science module, right?
Right. The overarching mission of these sources is to really dismantle the idea that math in science class is just, a series of disconnected random worksheets.
Which is such a relief, honestly.
Right. They frame quantitative thinking as the fundamental language we use to explain how living systems actually work.
Yeah, and to get students into this mindset, the curriculum designers created a very specific aesthetic environment, right? They call it the Bioforge.
They do. And it's brilliant.
I have to admit, when I saw we were looking at a middle school math standard, I definitely expected dry equations, but this Bioforge concept is immersive.
It's extremely immersive.
You have to imagine stepping into a solar punk Victorian science lab. You're an apprentice there.
I love that visual.
It's warm, it's grounded in reality. The walls are covered in careful, meticulous calculations drawn out on copper rust-colored grid paper.
Oh, specifically hex code A65A3A for the design nerds out there.
Yes, exactly. You can almost hear the brass gears clicking in the background.
Hmm.
The premise is that every data table and every plotted line is a tangible tool used to measure the natural world.
And it creates this brilliant psychological reset for the students.
How so?
Well, before a student can learn to use the tools in that Bioforge lab, they have to unlearn what they think those tools are for in the first place.
Okay, that makes sense.
The cognitive research in our stack highlights a major obstacle to this. They call it a vernacular misconception.
A vernacular misconception. Looking at the cognitive research here, it seems like the biggest hurdle isn't the math itself, but kind of the branding of math.
Yes, the branding is a massive cognitive roadblock.
Students bring this misconception that math simply means calculating quickly. Like, they think if they miss a single decimal point on their grid paper, the entire science experiment is just ruined.
Right. And the human brain, especially in middle school, often seeks those binary outcomes. Right or wrong, fast or slow.
Totally.
So a vernacular misconception happens when the everyday colloquial experience of a concept overrides its strict scientific application.
Because these students have been rewarded for perfect arithmetic in other classes for years.
Exactly. So they assume quantitative thinking in biology is just another performance of human calculation.
But the sources are adamant that the goal here is not perfect arithmetic.
Not at all.
Which really begs the question, if we aren't demanding perfect calculations, what is the actual utility of the numbers?
Well, a number in a science lab is not an abstract value. It is a direct representation of physical reality.
Okay.
We use computational thinking to measure biological events, organize those observations, and compare quantities.
So we're identifying underlying patterns, basically.
Precisely. The math is an algorithm to test whether a mental model of an ecosystem actually makes sense when you subject it to real-world data.
I see. So relying on math and biology is less about winning a spelling bee of equations and more about navigating.
That's a good way to put it.
It's like carrying a brass compass into a dense forest. The compass doesn't walk for you,
Right.
and it certainly doesn't clear the brush out of your way, but it anchors your claims to a definitive direction.
That gets us halfway there,
Yeah.
sure. But the danger of that analogy is assuming the compass works universally without context.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
In the Bioforge, a graph or a data table or even a percentage is completely useless if it doesn't directly help explain the biological phenomenon you are looking at.
Oh, I see. The numbers have to actually serve the scientific claim.
Exactly. They have to mean something in the real world.
Well, let's put that compass to the test in the real world then, starting at the macro level. The sources lean heavily into ecosystems and population dynamics.
They do, yeah. According to the NGSS framework, computational models are non-negotiable for understanding how ecosystems actually function.
Because ecology is fundamentally a discipline of system dynamics.
Exactly. Take the flow of energy, for example.
Okay.
The curriculum uses the 10% rule and energy pyramids to model how energy transfers from producers, like plants,
Yeah.
up to herbivores.
And eventually to apex predators.
Right.
Right, so the students calculate the proportions of energy transfer using really simple ratios.
Yep.
They see that only about 10% of the energy makes it to the next trophic level. But what the math actually reveals here is the thermodynamics of survival.
That is a great phrase. The thermodynamics of survival.
The numbers dictate the literal structure of life. It proves why you cannot have a forest made entirely of grizzly bears.
Let's unpack the mechanism behind that 10% a bit, because that is where the quantitative thinking moves from abstract to concrete.
Sure.
Where does the other 90% go?
Right, doesn't just vanish.
It goes to the sheer metabolic cost of staying alive. A deer eats grass, but it has to use the vast majority of that chemical energy just to maintain its body heat.
To breathe, to run from predators.
Exactly. Most of the energy is lost to the environment as heat.
Wow.
So when a wolf eats that deer, it is only accessing a tiny fraction of the original solar energy captured by the grass.
The math makes that thermodynamic loss visible. You need a massive base of producers just to support a tiny fraction of top predators.
Exactly.
And that limitation naturally leads us into one of the most fascinating computational models in the sources, the bathtub model.
Oh, the bathtub model is a classic application of stocks and flows system dynamics.
It's so clever.
Think of a physical bathtub. The water inside represents your stock, let's say, the total population of deer in a forest.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The water flowing in from the faucet represents your birth rate in immigration.
Right.
And the water draining out represents the death rate in immigration.
So, if the faucet runs faster than the drain, the water level rises, meaning the population is in a state of exponential growth.
Exactly. But biologically, a bathtub isn't infinitely deep.
Right, it inevitably overflows.
Yes. In biological terms, that overflow point is the carrying capacity.
Carrying capacity, okay.
A population's growth hits a hard mathematical limit based on finite resources like food, water, and physical space.
So the computation proves that exponential growth cannot continue indefinitely within a finite system.
Right. Negative feedback loops like starvation or disease eventually widen the drain to balance the faucet.
You know, this all makes perfect sense conceptually to us, but I kept thinking about the 7th graders in this scenario.
That's a big concept for them.
It is. Staring at a carrying capacity equation on copper rust grid paper is conceptually rigorous, sure. But how does a teacher make that abstract mathematical limit feel visceral to a 12-year-old?
Well, they bridge that gap using physical simulation. The pedagogical guides highlight this cornerstone ecology activity called the Oh Dear simulation.
Oh, dear. I spent some time looking into this one, and it is a brilliant translation of system dynamics into physical movement.
It really is.
The students go outside and physically act out the math,
Right. A portion of the class plays the deer.
and the others play the resources, representing food, water, and shelter.
Yes. During each round, the deer have to run across a field and pair up with a matching resource to survive and reproduce.
But the genius of the simulation isn't the running itself, is it?
No, it's the data tracking. They don't just play a game.
They meticulously graph the resource availability and the organism abundance over 15 or more consecutive rounds.
Exactly. And when you look at the graphs these students generate, it is never a flat line.
No, they see this violent visual teeter-totter.
That's exactly what it looks like.
The deer population spikes because resources are abundant. But then that massive population consumes all the food, causing the resource line on the graph to just plummet.
And because the resources crash, the deer population crashes in the very next round.
Right.
What you are describing is a phase lag in a predator-prey or resource-consumer dynamic.
A phase lag.
Yes. The graph translates the physical running into a permanent visual record of dynamic equilibrium.
So the students realize that stability in an ecosystem doesn't actually mean a static, unchanging number.
Not at all. It looks like a sine wave of survival and starvation just oscillating around that invisible carrying capacity line.
And then the graph transitions from a mere historical record of, who survived round 4 into a predictive engine.
Yes, that's the key.
Once they recognize that oscillating mathematical pattern, they can look at round 15 and accurately predict the biological reality of round 16.
They're using math to predict natural phenomena, which is the absolute ultimate goal of the Bioforge. But this macro-level predictability introduces a fascinating contrast when the curriculum forces students to zoom in.
This is a crucial pivot in the sources, actually. If the macro ecosystem is a bathtub that inevitably reaches its carrying capacity, it means every organism is locked in a brutal competition for limited space.
Exactly.
That macro-level competition is exactly what drives the genetic selection we see at the micro level.
Right.
But the math of genetics behaves very differently than the math of populations.
It really does. And the cognitive research identifies a massive friction point here. They call it the Punnett square trap.
The Punnett square trap. That sounds like a puzzle a Victorian apprentice gets locked inside of if they pull the wrong brass lever.
I mean, in terms of cognitive development, it essentially is a trap.
Really?
Yeah. In genetics, students use Punnett squares, which is a simple 2x2 grid to model how traits are passed down from parents to offspring.
Right, predicting the probability of certain gene combinations. We all remember these from high school biology. You have capital letters for dominant traits, lowercase for recessive.
Exactly. But the trap lies in how the human brain processes the grid.
Okay, how so?
Students often become absolute masters at filling out the squares. They treat it like a Sudoku puzzle.
Oh, I see.
The brain gets a quick dopamine hit from solving the grid with definitive, clean answers.
Right, it feels good to just get it done.
It does.
Yeah.
The problem is they completely miss the probabilistic nature of biological inheritance. They view the grid as a deterministic guarantee rather than a model of probability.
Oh, so they think the Punnett square is a crystal ball, not a loaded die.
Perfect analogy, yes.
If the math says a trait has a 75% chance of appearing, they expect the biology to obey that command perfectly.
Exactly. So to challenge this misconception, the Bioforge curriculum introduces a coin toss simulation.
How does that work?
Let's say a Punnett square predicts that classic 3-to-1 ratio for a trait, meaning a 75% chance of one phenotype and a 25% chance of the other.
Okay, standard ratio.
The student flips a coin or draws tokens to simulate a small number of offspring, say 4 simulated genetic events.
But because 4 is an incredibly small sample size, the statistical noise is just deafening.
Exactly. They might flip a 50-50 split, or they might get 100% of the dominant trait.
And the cognitive research emphasizes the intense frustration this causes.
Oh, it's a huge moment of frustration.
Students will look at their data, look at their perfectly calculated Punnett square, and immediately declare, my data is wrong, the experiment failed.
Yes. They genuinely believe that if the messy, real-world biological data doesn't perfectly mirror the clean arithmetic of their grid paper, somebody made an error.
Which is a profound misunderstanding of what math is.
It is.
So how does the curriculum handle it? How do you coach a student through the realization that biological data is just inherently noisy?
This is where the pedagogical framework deploys what it calls just-in-time cognitive coaching.
Just-in-time cognitive coaching. I like that.
Yeah, instead of simply correcting the student, the teacher prompts them with specific mental exercises.
Oh.
The first is to think flexibly about the concept of sample size. Does a single roll of a die guarantee a specific outcome, or is it merely expressing a likelihood over time?
Right, like if I flip a coin twice and get heads both times, it doesn't mean tails has ceased to exist in the universe.
Exactly.
It just means my sample size is too small to reveal the overall probability.
Precisely. And from there, the coaching moves them to a strategy called think interdependently.
Think interdependently.
Yes. The teacher stops the individual lab work and aggregates the data from every single group in the classroom onto the main board.
Oh, wow. I see the brilliance in that.
Right.
One student's data showed a 50% ratio, another got 10%, and a third got an anomalous 90%.
Yeah.
But when you combine the data of 30 students, simulating hundreds of genetic events, the statistical noise cancels itself out.
It does.
The combined classroom average suddenly gravitates toward that mathematical prediction. Instead of the chaotic 10% or 90%, the aggregate lands at, say, 26.5%.
Which is incredibly close to the theoretical 25%. This demonstrates the law of large numbers in real time. It is a watershed moment for scientific literacy.
I can imagine.
The student realizes that variation, probability, and uncertainty are not experimental errors. They are fundamental mathematical features of living systems.
The math helps us map the hidden order inside all the biological chaos.
Exactly.
But, managing that realization requires a significant shift in perspective.
It really does.
To handle the friction of messy data and inherent probability, an apprentice in this Bioforge lab requires a specialized mental framework.
Right. The curriculum doesn't just leave them with a realization. It provides a concrete tool to ensure they're using numbers as evidence, rather than just filling in blanks on a worksheet.
Yes, and we want to deliver this framework directly to you, so consider this your official Bioforge brain hack.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
The overarching scientist habit we were cultivating here is striving for accuracy.
Okay, and the specific mental move you need to execute is an executive function override.
Right. Before you trust any number, before you plot a single point on that copper rust grid paper, force your brain to pause and ask 3 questions.
What does this number actually represent? What pattern does it show? And how does it support my explanation?
Let's analyze why that pause works neurologically. By asking, what does this number represent? You are interrupting the brain's automatic desire to just crunch the numbers quickly.
Yeah.
You are forcing your executive function to tether that abstract percentage or ratio back to a living, breathing phenomenon.
It breaks the vernacular misconception of fast math.
Exactly.
It is the difference between blindly turning a brass gear, just because it looks interesting, and understanding precisely how that specific gear meshes with the larger mechanism to drive the machine forward.
Beautifully put.
Whether you are using a computational model to predict how a genetic mutation alters a protein, or analyzing a massive data set to determine how a prolonged drought will impact a forest's carrying capacity, numbers are strictly analytical tools.
It is so clear from our deep dive today that quantitative thinking is the unseen architecture of biology.
It really is.
We've explored how macro-level population changes are governed by thermodynamic limits and system dynamics.
We've seen how proportions and ratios define the 10% rule in food webs.
Right. And we've navigated the micro-level frustrations of genetic probability and sample sizes.
Embracing all of this requires stepping away from the anxiety of arithmetic performance and learning to wield mathematics as both a descriptive and a predictive language for life.
Absolutely. And the sources offer a very specific mandate designed for the students in this module, and it serves as the perfect summary of the framework. Listen closely to this.
Let's hear it.
In the Bioforge lab, numbers are not decorations. They are evidence tools. When you use math carefully, you make your science stronger.
That is the ultimate foundation of scientific literacy.
It is.
However, the sources leave us with a final concept that pushes this idea to its absolute limit, specifically regarding the ethics of CRISPR gene editing technology.
CRISPR, meaning our relatively new ability to go into a genome and physically alter DNA sequences.
Yes. We've spent this entire discussion establishing how mathematics and computational models allow us to observe, understand, and predict biological life with incredible accuracy.
Right.
But CRISPR fundamentally shifts that dynamic. What happens when we use those exact same computational tools not just to observe, but to actively engineer genetic code?
Oh, wow. That completely flips the paradigm. We aren't just predicting the outcome of the Punnett square anymore.
No, we are changing the variables inside the grid.
Wow.
If mathematics is the language of life, are we content to simply read and translate the math of nature? Or, guided by these advanced computational models, are we on the verge of actively rewriting the equations of life itself?
That is a staggering thought to mull over. The brass compass isn't just helping us navigate the dense forest anymore. It is giving us the coordinates to plant an entirely new ecosystem.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep striving for accuracy, question your models, and we will catch you next time.